It's a new idea for Iowa. Some see potential, others see trouble. This week, the CEO of one of those huge carbon sequestration pipeline developers will sit down here for an extended interview. He answers critics about whether his company is just in it for the big money, and also what he thinks a project like this one means for the Iowa farm community where he grew up. Plus, he skipped the Trump administration, but he did serve under back-to-back Democratic presidents. We'll hear from the VA secretary explaining why his administration is changing policy and will provide abortions in limited circumstances. Also, why a state house leader believes that legal weed deserves to be one of the main priorities as her candidates campaign across the state.
From your local election headquarters, this is The Insiders with Dave Price.
Automakers' commitment to electric vehicles means additional workers for a Pleasant Hill company. DZ said it'll need 160 new workers next year as it builds a factory and transforms a warehouse in a production space to make parts for General Motors' new electric vans. Meanwhile, another project works to sign up landowners so that company can complete its plans that it says will have both economic and environmental benefits. Summit Carbon Solutions is one of 3 proposed projects that would go through Iowa and build a carbon sequestration pipeline to tunnel underneath the land. Company says that it has 800 landowners who've agreed to let the pipeline pass through their property. Summit says the process will make ethanol plants more valuable and also safely remove carbon through the pipeline. It'll end up going to a storage site in North Dakota. Company's CEO agreed to sit down here to answer questions about what has happened so far and what could happen later.
Actually, we're in very good order as a project as a whole. As we look at the overall plan for the project, the timing, as we think about stepping through each process as we move down the line of completion of the project, we're ahead of schedule. So we feel very good about that. And one of the milestones that we've recently hit internally is we now, on right-of-way acquisition, we now have over 50% of the state of Iowa, which was one of the goals internally we had. Really, Dave, it shows the optimism around the project. It shows people that are actually attracted to this project. The landowners that we are actually working with on this project are vested and becoming part of it. So we're really pleased with hitting that landmark internally here in the state of Iowa.
So we've never had one of these things in the state, and then there's the announcement of 3 different separate projects, right?
Yeah, certainly.
How is this all going to play out? Is it survival of the fittest? Who can get it? Who can get the agreements fastest? How does it work?
I think there's a component to that. It reminds me a bit of the ethanol space of 2005 and 2006 when there was a need and really a political backing to follow through on an industry. That's very much where we are again today. Again, pipelines in the state of Iowa traditionally are not something that should be uncommon. There's 47,000 miles already in the state of Iowa. The fact that there's now a few of us... Different kinds, yes, absolutely. But the fact that there's now a few of us now talking about carbon pipelines in the state of Iowa would be unique, certainly. How it all plays out, I think it really becomes a will or a process of who's got the momentum, who really has the project that I think is a desirable project, and they might all happen. Quite frankly, I don't have the answer to that.
This is such a different project in the sense that let's say you want to build a big office building or something, right?
Sure.
You buy the property, you get all the permits, you line up all the people necessary, then you go do it and you're done. In this case, you're doing a huge project, but you need at some level the cooperation of landowners,
correct,
one way or the other, to allow you to use their property. I mean, that's complicated, right?
It is. Yeah, it is. And again, it's a process, and it's a process that takes somewhat of a trust factor. Again, we have 125 land agents working on this process for us. And here in the state of Iowa, we affect 29 counties that we will participate in, and we're working very closely. I like the term granular at the county level. We want our agents to have a relationship with the landowners that we're working with, and but again, it's a process. We watch the right-of-way and the acquisition of right-of-way. I really watch that on a daily basis. And again, been really pleased, but the numbers don't move a lot on a daily basis. And our chief operating officer would tell me, Lee, it's a trust factor. It's a steady emphasis on moving the project forward on a day-to-day basis.
There's disagreement with some landowners on one of the other project proposals here, but they don't want surveyors on there, Delaware County, I believe. How do you all handle that? Because you do need that surveying done.
Yeah, everything that we have done to date has been voluntary. We want to convince the landowner that it's something that really is not just good for them, but good for the industry, so we need to be there. So we have been very active on a voluntary basis, and we'll continue to be that.
You mentioned you hit the 50% threshold. That means 50% to go here.
We do have 50% to go, yeah.
So how does you start to, at some point, you're going to deal with those who are reluctant to allow you to come onto the property. How do you handle that?
I would tell you, I'm not sure, Dave, that we're going to see it being more reluctance or better adoption, because in the last month, we've seen the best adoption of the project based on right-of-way since the process has started. And I think that's very encouraging for me. We are very much committed to voluntary easements with our landowners, and we will continue to do that here over the next several months until we can find ourselves in a position that will have clarity to the end. But we are very committed on a voluntary basis and an economic basis. Every one of our landowners and the folks that we're talking with about easements are different. And so, again, I use the term granular. We spend a lot of time working very closely with them, each one of them on their own situation, to find an economic solution that works.
When I travel and they overbook my flight, they make an offer. First round it might be, hey, $200 voucher, anybody wants to get bumped.
Yep.
Then they go up and keep going up. Is that how this process works?
Not exactly.
Those who hold out do better later?
Yeah, not exactly, but I would tell you that, again, every landowner has different specifics. And so as we think about that, and not every economic equation is the same, that is fair. But a lot of that has to do with different situations at the various landowner and the farm gate that we're trying to deal with.
You're a businessman, so in an optimal situation, you have your folks sit down with me, the landowner, we work it out, everybody moves forward. Barring some almost miracle here, you're not going to get 100% of people who want you to use their land. So
that's correct.
You talked about you want it voluntarily, but it could
down
the road.
Yes, it could. We could get to the point where we have to use eminent domain. We wouldn't be the only infrastructure project that's had to do that in the past, for sure. Ultimately, that's not our goal. Our goal would be 100% voluntary easements. But I'd be naive to think at the end of the process there might not be a few that would still be resistance, show resistance to what we're trying to accomplish.
And what is your argument to folks about why, if it does end up coming to that, eminent domain is fair, in the sense that you're a for-profit company here? We're not talking about building a railroad or a whatever, phone line.
Well, again, I would argue railroads are for profit, and they certainly are. But I would also say that this is not just about the carbon pipeline. This is about an industry. There's a reason Summit Carbon went out and hired an agricultural executive. I took this role because I felt it's critical for the future of agriculture, and I believe that. There's been milestones throughout agriculture that we've hit. The ethanol industry itself was conceived in 1976, but it really took off in 2006, which is when you saw the economic benefit through land values and everything else gaining ground. So as I look at the project in general, it's bigger than just the pipeline. This is a whole nother marketplace that we can demonstrate to the U.S. Farm Gate that will be open to us based on the infrastructure that we'll put in place that will allow us to tap into those various markets. It truly is different in the sense that it's not a railroad, but it's similar to it in the same. You know, the Transcontinental Railroad was built in 1862, and that was built to open markets. And carbon pipelines and the carbon sequestration and capture process opens markets to U.S. agriculture.
You grew up in Iowa.
I did.
How do you assure folks back home where you grew up that, does this go through your area?
It goes through my home county, yes.
Home county, okay. Hancock, right?
That's correct.
Okay. How do you assure people that this is not going to mess with their land? And cause that damage, that whether it's in the tiles, whatever?
Sure. Well, again, through the arrangements that we have with tile companies to come back in and basically, really indemnify the landowner on that. We'll guarantee the tile and the replacement of any issues with tile really for the life of the pipeline. But I think it's fundamentally a little different, at least in my home county. I'm sure there's a few that would oppose what we're trying to accomplish, but many support it. And what I hear from those folks is very much about just put it back the way you found it. And that's, I think, what an ag executive can bring to this company that maybe someone from an oil and gas type environment wouldn't. I understand what APHs are. I understand what yields are. I understand what bringing an acre back to full production means, and which is why we already have an agronomic component to our company that will be working with the landowner even after we're finished.
Why do you want this?
Personally, I want this personally because I believe it will help transition and also be a generational move for agriculture. I like to be involved in things around agriculture that I think mark those two components. I want to see the U.S. family farm stay in the family. Again, I grew up on a family farm. It's important to me. There are roles I certainly could have taken, but this one seems to me to matter. And as we look about lowering the CI score, the carbon intensity score on an industry, that in particular is very intriguing to me because I do believe carbon and the carbon score around industry is going to matter in the future. We just happen to have a great industry that really stands tall with the opportunity to do that. And so with that in the back of my mind, I really do this with the farm gate in mind. I do this with the U.S. farmer in mind because I believe it will have consequences, positive consequences, to their balance sheets going forward.
All right, address the skeptics who say this is owned by a wealthy man, this company, if successful, will make a ton of money, and it's really about making a bunch of money rather than the environment. Well,
certainly investments want a return. That's fair. Anyone that actually invests in anything, I think, to a degree, wants to make a return. And so with that, I don't debate that. Our investors are return-minded, but they're also carbon-minded. And they're very much thinking about what the future looks like 10 years from now. And with those investments and the investor deck that we have, I'm very pleased for it. Because quite frankly, the mindset inside the boardroom and how we think about this investment is truly about lowering the CI score for agriculture and creating a credit environment that will help the marketplace going forward. And again, you can speak to them about their attitudes beyond that, but from my conversations with our investors, they're very sincere in the fact that this is what they hope to see happen.
We haven't yet seen a public list of the landowners who've accepted the deal. According to Summit, the landowners who are in the proposed pathway of the pipeline. Also remember, Iowa Utilities Board would still have to decide if eminent domain could be used for the landowners who have not agreed to let the pipeline go through. Up next, hear why the VA secretary told me that a long-standing policy is about to change.